Douglas, these are two attacks in just 2 days in Canada. First of all, two people rammed down in Quebec, two soldiers. One of them died. The attacker was later killed by police. Now what we're seeing in Ottawa is Parliament in lockdown. A shooter, a gunman opening fire first at the War Memorial and then in Parliament. And we understand it could have been more than one gunman. At least one of them apparently has been killed. The city is in lockdown, and Ottawa, normally not much news comes out of Ottawa, but of course it is the Canadian capital, and Canada has been getting involved with the effort to combat the Islamic State group.
Very much so. Now, obviously, you know, the temptation always is to start to try to speculate and to draw connections when it's perhaps premature to draw connections, but you're absolutely right in saying that there are certain dots that you could connect here. Perhaps a lot of Canadians have very much coming to the forefront of their minds as they watch these images, the fact that about just over a week ago, the Canadian Parliament voted, led by the opposition, led by the Conservative government of Stephen Harper, which has a majority in that Parliament, to very much join the U.S.-led coalition fighting the Islamic State group in terms of sending troops, special forces, refueling tankers, and basically that role is going to be very much forefront of people's minds because of the link with the incident you just reported possibly a couple of days ago. Obviously, we have no idea whether the same people or if it's totally individuals acting on their own, but it's inevitable that people are going to start thinking. Just 2 days ago, you had a man run over two soldiers, and this man was, the Canadian media reported very widely, they made a point of saying he was a Muslim convert with jihadist sympathies. Now, you could say, well, that's speculating too, drawing a link between that, but it's clear that it's perhaps no coincidence, and that's what people are wondering right now. You've had one shooter. At first, it was thought that one shooter was involved. You even had early on, this has been all over Twitter, obviously, the second it started breaking, you had one or two MPs within the Parliament itself tweeting that they had believed that the shooter had been actually killed, that the shooter was deceased. Then it became very clear that this was still very much an ongoing story. Within minutes of that, you still saw police running around in front of the buildings, these government buildings in the center of Ottawa. And now Canadian television at this hour, CBC News, reporting that they believe that there's more, that there could be multiple, it could be, we don't have any firm verification involved.
Thank you very much, Doug. And we can actually now speak to a journalist from CBC Television. That's Margot McDiarmid. Margot, could you tell us the latest? What's happening right now? We understand you've been reporting that at least one gunman, I'm afraid we've lost the connection there, to Margot McDiarmid. She is opposite at Parliament, and she was telling us earlier that that part of the city was in lockdown, and her TV station has been reporting that one gunman was shot dead by police inside Parliament. So perhaps we can go to her now. Margot, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Margot, what's the situation like there now? Like I was just saying, you've been reporting that one gunman has been shot inside Parliament building, but there could be at least one more on the roof of Parliament. Is that right?
Yes, well, there is one. They are confirming that one person has been shot inside our Parliament buildings. And there is a second, at least one other person that the police are after in downtown Ottawa. And in fact, we're within the precinct of the Parliament buildings, within half a mile or so, and our entire building is locked down. We can't go near the windows at all. So the entire sort of downtown core of Ottawa has been completely locked down. All the schools, offices, everyone is being told to stay inside. So they are still looking for a second gunman in the Canada's capital. Just to back up a bit, what happened this morning around 10 a.m. Eastern Time, a gunman wearing a sort of a long coat, long hair, scarf, walked up to a guard who was beside the War Memorial in downtown Ottawa, shot him, and then took off towards the Parliament buildings, hijacked a car within sort of just in front of the fence near Parliament buildings, drove up to the Parliament area, and somehow got into the center block, which is where the actual Parliament is. And there's some remarkable video that I'm hoping you can show in the next little while that was shot. All the security guards went after the guy, and at least 20 to 30 shots were fired, and he was killed in that exchange. The Prime Minister has been obviously taken out of the downtown area, and all the politicians are either in their offices or have been taken out of the area. We're still waiting to hear if the second person has been found. And as you can imagine, there's huge tension and concern in the downtown area, because Ottawa's Parliament has always been sort of this common ground, very, very open, very sort of easy for the public to move around the Parliament property, and this seems to have just basically changed everything.
Margot, Ottawa, even though it's a capital, it's a pretty small place, and it's rare for it to make headlines, but this could be linked to Canada's actions with regard to the Islamic State group.
It could be. A couple of days ago, there was another attack on two armed forces people in Quebec. A man who was known to our security forces as having been sort of involved in terrorism, or wanting to be involved in terrorism, ran into them and eventually killed. One of them was killed, and the man who was driving the car was also killed in the attack. There is a lot of talk about, is this linked to Canada's decision to actually join the fight against ISIS in Iraq? This week alone, we have just sent 6 F-18 fighter jets to drop bombs on ISIS in Iraq, and up to 300 personnel are going. It was a controversial decision, and it split our parliament, in fact. So there's, it's kind of too early to really talk about that, because everyone's still ducking behind stone monuments in downtown Ottawa, but there's no doubt that will be something that will be raised in the days to come once this very tense situation is resolved here.